Welcome to the next video in our series, Influencers Influencing. I'm Alan van der Hayden, and today we're going to be talking about the cloud. I'm very pleased to have with me Matt LeBeau, a friend of mine. We've known each other for a while, from AWS. Matt is a strategic partner manager in AWS, particularly related to SAP. Welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks, Alan. And I hope you don't mind. I know I had that fancy screen set up, but I'm sure I'm like a lot of us these days. I just wanted to step outside, so I decided to step outside for this.
It looks awesome. I'm a little jealous, actually. I'm all in. So I think let's just start. We do this in a question and answer way, Matt, and just talk about, in a way, one of the things we've learned lately is that, and I have to say it out loud, that going to the cloud is a no-brainer. Maybe you can just give us a perspective of what's happening now in the recent times and how you, and specifically Amazon, are adapting to the processes.
Yeah, so certainly I spent a lot of time in the on-premise world, and 7 or 8 years ago, if you asked me would I be running production, Oracle or ERP or any of these, systems in somebody's cloud, I would have probably said no. But I think pretty clearly that that's not the case, and hasn't been the case probably since 2015, 2016. In the SAP space, the first certified offerings for SAP to be able to run fully virtualized in a cloud really started taking off around that time, and now across all the cloud providers, there's thousands of people running SAP in the cloud, and certainly AWS has, we have our share of that.
You mentioned a couple of things there that make me reminisce a little bit. Back in 2015, anyone want to go productive on SAP in the cloud, it was like, what? And I remember I was one of the very first ones that took a customer there. On that matter, what I've seen in my experience is that we've moved from this infrastructure view of life, which is, hey, I got a server here, I want to put it in the cloud, to much more of a platform as a service. And I think the numbers match up to that. Maybe talk a little bit about how Amazon has taken us to the next level in that perspective.
I think actually there's a whole lot of people that are contributing to that. The infrastructure as a service part of how people run their ERP systems is, I think, pretty well defined. There's still variances between people's different offerings, but that was kind of where everything started. Can you actually run things securely and reliably in a cloud? And also, does it save you money, which typically it does. So I think that has been the discussion for a very long time. But after 2 or 3 or 4 years or so of people actually running these workloads in the cloud, they're starting to use these platforms as their innovation platforms of choice. And so now it's a little bit more about the platform services, I think. And maybe the analogy is you can use a flip phone and have a phone conversation, or you could use a smartphone and have a phone conversation, but you can use Waze on the smartphone, and you can do a lot of other things with the smartphone. Yeah, the basic conversation is still happening, but the platform, these cloud platforms unlock a whole boatload of innovation that is really hard to do in an on-premise world, because some of it has to do with extremely large scale. It's just not practical to do, especially if you're not a very large global organization with a big fat IT budget.
Matt, you brought up a lot of interesting things there. Firstly, one thing that I used to get a lot of objections from people was security. Oh, I can't afford to have my stuff in the cloud. And what's happened in the past is actually that in the past couple of years is that's transformed the opposite way, actually, because security is so much better in the cloud now than if you have on-prem, because you've got all that expertise that you have in-house on that point.
Yeah, I do think the security topic kind of flipped in the last maybe 10 years. People kind of have switched from, if I can go in and look at my server every day, it's secure, to, well, geez, these cloud providers have thousands of people working on security.
The other thing that you spoke about there is scalability. And I think people underestimate that scalability and the rapid deployment mechanisms. And just from my experience, I was involved in a migration from ECC to S4 recently. And what happened there is that we ended up having to do 6 iterations of that. And if we didn't have the cloud, that would have been a 3-year project. But those 6 iterations were just, few weeks in span. So the flexibility that you get and that scalability, I don't think you can underestimate. I don't know if you want to comment on that.
You hit on something else that I think I think is super interesting and that we see constantly. People that run SAP environments are used to these being big projects that take a lot of time. And generally speaking, there's very, very few people that I encounter that have been in some on-premise or hosted environment that are used to doing development operations for testing or for demo systems or any of that type of thing, where these temporary systems can be invoked so fast and with such automation that we see. I was just looking at another customer that sent us a very nice message the other day saying that it used to take them weeks and now they're deploying in hours. Now, I'd argue that if you're an SAP customer and it takes you weeks to deploy an environment, you probably don't need a cloud to improve on that. But generally speaking, once you start to put your systems into a cloud environment where we can script it, where it's readily accessible, where we can, make it move really quickly, it just unlocks a lot more efficiency and lowers costs. And I think that is pretty well proven also.
I want to move on the conversation a little bit and talk about how customers are deploying, various ways of deploying, and specifically SAP now. I was just off a conversation with a customer a little earlier today, and they are looking to do a migration to S4. And my advice to them is, it is probably easier to go first to the cloud, because when we do the migrations, we have so much more flexibility with setting up more dev systems and more trial systems if we need to. But maybe talk a little bit about how people move to the cloud in their SAP systems, what their options are and how they do that.
The first thing that we see a lot is just, I don't want to change anything, I just want to move it. And so we do that's probably the most of what we do. The second thing that we see are people that want to move to the HANA database on their existing SAP environments. And I think that happens because people want to do that in preparation for moving to SAP's S4 applications, the new offerings. And also sometimes they do it just strictly because they really have a performance issue where they want to, eke some more performance out of either their systems in general, or they have some, batch processes that are running super slow that they think if they get it into the HANA database, it'll run faster. And that does turn out to be the case in a lot of cases. And then lastly, of course, we have a lot of customers that either already have moved to S4 and then move into AWS, or into the cloud, but more so we see people doing those things all together. They move to the cloud, they update they get off their old legacy database, they move to the HANA database, and they move to S4. And that's the place where, quite frankly, it's all, with us at least, it's all about partners, because those business transformations going from ECC to the new S4 are non-trivial. And that's where we absolutely, over 80% of our customer engagements are through partners, and especially for those S4 transformation and conversion projects, that's a big partner thing for us. One
thing you mentioned there was speed, and you're talking about that in the context of HANA. Our experience, funnily enough, is just moving to AWS has improved speed for many of our customers, and that's something we didn't typically expect. You also mentioned HANA, and I think this is at this point, it's a good time to talk about the cloud. As I mentioned already, is not just about infrastructure as a service, and there's all these other things that are coming in. It's just like HANA, where machine learning and different ways of looking at data. And you did a great presentation yesterday, as a matter of fact, on data and how you can use the cloud to actually have a better structure of looking at data. Maybe talk a little bit about that as well.
I think you're referring to this migration event that we did recently, and when I was thinking about what I might talk about, it occurred to me that with the economic circumstances we're all dealing with these days, the customers might just want to know how to get more out of what they've already got investments in, and so I tried to structure that little chat about that. But these these bundled ERP systems are super critical. I mean, the flow of those processes through in and out of these businesses is how the businesses run, and they're super valuable. And the fact that they're all integrated, and that the enterprise applications offerings are purpose built to solve specific problems is why they're so successful. But they also create a data silo dilemma, because when you buy an Oracle system, the data is really supposed to run in the Oracle system. And yes, there's apps and integration points that you can go in and out of, but it can be really hard to try to tie all those things together. And over the years, and I don't know who started it actually, but somebody came up with this idea of a data lake. If you bring all the data into a single location, whether it's structured, semi-structured, or even unstructured data, a lot of people don't realize the value of their videos and their audio files and the other things that can be done with unstructured data. You can pull all that into a data lake, which these days is pretty darn super low cost. But there's a whole continuum there, and it starts with, first of all, making sure that you actually have access to one of these big cloud platforms where all of these cool tools are, and where you can pay as you go. You can try things out. It's not uncommon for us to find people that are finding services in hours, building stuff in days, and launching things in weeks. And even to benefit, the big ERP backend system in some way that isn't necessarily natively built in that system, or that maybe they haven't just thought of yet.
So Matt, today we have covered quite a lot of ground actually in a pretty short time. We've spoken everything from using infrastructure as service to scalability to added automation to machine learning. There's a whole spectrum of things. So when you talk about cloud, it gets very confusing very quickly. And then on top of that, we've got all these new players that are coming into the game. Now, I know from my personal view, and not to be, making this a pitch or anything, Amazon has been in this for much longer than most people and have a very mature platform. But I know you also, very particular when you give advice to people, to say, don't listen to us, listen to other customers. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and how do I, as a person trying to figure my way out in this new landscape, how do I go and find out what best to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. And yeah, and you're right. I mean, I've only been in AWS for about 3 years, and I only started really researching the cloud maybe 5 years. And so everybody's at someplace on that journey, right? And I think that the reason that I say go talk to customers who have done it is that everybody's got their own point of view, certainly, and we certainly do at AWS. And you're gonna hear analysts saying things, and SAP will say one thing, and some partner will say something else. I actually like talking to customers that have actually done something that I'm thinking about doing. I don't know about you, but when I want to go buy a wood chipper, which I do have a wood chipper. But anyway, when I want to go buy a wood chipper, I go find somebody who's got a wood chipper and say, why did you buy that one? So I'd encourage you to dip your toe in the water. Go talk to your favorite partner. Go find a customer who's done it. That's my advice.
That's great advice, Matt. Anything more? Yeah,
and actually another thing I'd tell you, Alan, is at least what we built in AWS, we built a platform for people who want to build. I mean, it is this big platform with all of these intricate building blocks that are all linked together, and people are building all kinds of fascinating stuff. But not everybody actually wants to go become a master builder, right? Some people just want to buy the house. Or maybe they want to go build the house, but they want to build the house with a couple of contractors that at least know, how to build it, not have it fall down. And so in my little world in AWS and SAP, over 80% of our engagements with customers are either led by or include our partners. And that's for a very important reason. We do very much have customers who absolutely just use AWS and build on AWS and are happy because they've got well-funded IT departments and they want to invest in their AWS capabilities, and they want to use AWS as their platform of innovation, either with SAP or outside of SAP or both. But we also have a good deal of customers that just want to know that they can move to something that's going to save them money and be more secure, and they don't want to necessarily take their entire organization and restaff and rethink how they're going to compute. And in that case, going with partners that have also done it is a super good idea. Just like I would say, Go talk to the customers who have done it. I would say if you're going to go do this, pick some partners who have done it a little bit, or maybe a lot, or maybe a real lot. So that tends to be the advice I give people if I'm asked.
Well, thank you, Matt. It's been a real pleasure speaking to you. I think you had more pleasure because you were out in the sunny space while I was stuck indoors. But thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure talking to you, Alan, and I look forward to when we can grab dinner in San Francisco again.
And for everyone else, we look forward to seeing you on our next video.